How's it going? Welcome back to another great video with your host, The Savior. Today we're going to be taking a look at a game that feels like it's from the past, but actually it's not. It's 2025, believe it or not, and we are all slowly decaying. But have no fear, are you a chosen undead? Have you played Dark Souls before? Because guess what? This is a Souls-like. So you might have to be a little bit of a crackhead to be calling this a Souls-like. Because yes, it does borrow elements from Souls, and at times it does almost remind me of Souls, but honestly, Blades of Fire is such a unique and interesting game, and that's where I have to give it major props. That's what I want to highlight in today's Blades of Fire review, okay? Now, I am going to be giving you a Blades of Fire game review based on the early access stuff and the preview stuff, but honestly this game is a lot more than just a simple Souls-like, and I think anyone comparing it purely to Souls is doing it a disservice. If anything, this is like a weird hybrid blend of Souls-like and For Honor, the Ubisoft kind of directional attack game, but with so much more depth and detail to it. This game is very much not for casual players, I think, even though it looks very casual on paper maybe, because the art style and the themes and the kind of story and everything about this game reminds me of games made in the PS2 to 360 PS3 kind of era of gaming, and that's a good thing because I love old school gaming. Some of my favorite games are from that time period, like Jak and Daxter, the original Demon's Souls. That's when gaming was peak, man, okay? That's when it was... That's when gaming... Sorry about that, I got jump scared by my partner because I'm such a narcissistic YouTuber and I'm screaming at myself but I couldn't hear anything. Mr. Beast! So Blades of Fire I would describe much more akin to something like For Honor mixed in with Souls-like combat, but it is very much its own unique thing, and I think that's what this game, deserves recognition for, that it's trying to be something unique and creative, and it does remind me of those, games back in that era of gaming, like Fable, for example, that I love so much, and it holds a special place in my heart. Back then is when games used to take creative risk and play around with new ideas, because it wasn't just a paycheck and a way to please investors back then. It was a passion project, and these developers, they've made some amazing games before. No one's denying that they don't have skills in creating video games.
I want more, and I know I shouldn't.
But this truly does feel very unique and old school in some good ways and in some ways not so much. So I do hope you enjoy this Blades of Fire review, this Blades of Fire game review, and do bear in mind that this is based on the early access stuff, okay, and the preview access that has been given to content creators and stuff, so I'm not talking about the full experience here, but I'm just giving you an early review of Blades of Fire. And if you're interested in this game, consider using my link on Instant Gaming down below, because you can get this game at a huge discount. I believe that they have it for Epic Game Store, but if not, you can find huge sales on Instant Gaming by using my link down below and getting yourself some savings on any game, new or old. Day one releases already come with a huge discount and sale, so please use my link, save some money.
Now you have my attention.
And I truly hope you enjoyed this Blades of Fire review, and that you subscribe to the channel if you are new here. I would highly appreciate it, because I'm so passionate about what I'm doing here, creating content for you guys, the wise ones. If you love deep analysis around video games, philosophical content and video essays and early reviews and yearly reviews around games and deeper analysis compared to other channels, then this is the right place for you. Right now, society have fallen into a very dangerous trend of tribal thinking, group mentality, and it's very prevalent in the gaming space. Not everyone, of course, has the same, likes and dislikes that you have, and that's okay. We need to have a nuanced discussion around games, understand what makes them good objectively, and understand what is personal biases and all that kind of stuff. So if you like that type of approach to reviews, subscribe to the channel. So here we go for Blades of Fire review. What do I actually think about this game? I'm going to go into the positives and negatives like I do with all of my early access coverage for new games releasing. And honestly, this is a very interesting game. And I'm just so happy, to be honest, that games like this can still exist, that it's not completely dead yet, and I do want people to support these developers and to support games like this, even if it does fumble at some things. For example, let's start off with a negative, okay, and there is a lot to love here, but I think that does need to be highlighted. Do not play this game for the story. Do not play this game for the characters. And I can't speak about the full version as of yet. You know, maybe the character arcs get very complicated, very good. But right now, this is very much a 360 inspired story in which, you know, you have, you know, your main protagonist, kind of a big buff, you know, just kind of man who gets things done by the job. The modern day media would describe him as stoic when it has nothing to do with stoicism, and that's not what a stoic is, but basically just, you know, a big gruff man, because obviously stoicism is about virtue, living in conformity with nature and accepting your nature, not just being a big buff guy where a lot of people portray modern day stoic characters like God of War, which is pretty stupid. I just wanted to say that. And then, of course, you have your little side companion who basically is a little yes man and basically, you know, tells you and helps you with environmental storytelling and puzzles and stuff like that, and gives you some, you know, something to do when you're traversing the world. But sadly, the presentation here is off, okay? The animations are off by quite a fair bit, I would say. The art style at times looks very appealing to me, but with characters, not so much. And the voice lines, the voice work in this game has very much hit or miss moments, okay? Sometimes it's, you know, really cool. Sometimes you can feel that it is definitely just an actor saying these lines with not much background given to them or much to go on, and it does feel very wooden in how it's delivered. And yeah, it's very weird because at times I really love this art style because it is very much like of this old fantasy, you know, something that we would get in like 80s to 90s fantasy, and I really do like what they're doing for the most part, but just when it comes to the story, I would give it an overall negative. Don't play this for the story, but it might work for you. Now, the next point I want to highlight is a positive, and that is the art style. The art style in this game is quite interesting, to say the least. Like I said, some of these characters have weird looks to them, but the environmental design is very interesting. It does pull from that kind of, you know, high fantasy 80s aesthetic where everything is, you know, very vibrant and high fantasy, and you get lots of these weird creatures. Now on to the main positive for this Blades of Fire review, and that is quite obviously the gameplay. That is where this game does something truly unique. It does have some, you know, borrowed mechanics from Souls, and that's why I kind of made that comparison to begin with. For example, resting at a forge, aka a bonfire, resets the enemies. Also, if you die, you don't lose your kind of, you know, XP or souls or essence or anything like that. Basically, the main core mechanic of this game is creating and forging weapons. So the name of the game for this is basically to, you know, forge your weapons and then use the weapons that you create to defeat higher tier enemies. And I really like how you basically gather the resources and can forge different weapons. It's not just, you know, grinding and all that kind of stuff, which I don't really like in video games. It's about how many enemies you defeat. So it doesn't have too much repetition to it, too much, you know, like grind to it. And the world feels alive. You know, you get a lot of, you know, interesting characters that you come across, and I'm sure there's more later on in the game, but there's a codex for you to keep an eye on and to learn more about this world, and it is a unique world, so that is another big positive. So yes, the gameplay does feel like Souls to begin with, but when you get used to it, you realize it's anything but a Souls game. There is no dodging around in this game, more about blocking and timing, okay? And this game is all about, Blades of Fire is all about directional attacks, okay? So that's why I compared it to For Honor, but it's even more detailed and complicated than For Honor. So you have, you know, sweeping attacks, lunging attacks, stabbing attacks, overheads, all that kind of stuff. What's so cool about Blades of Fire and why it's unique compared to other combat games, and it's actually doing something completely original, which I like, is it's not just based on your directional attacks, but it's based on what the enemies are actually wearing. So where they're armored. If they're armored, on their head, then an overhead attack will not do that much damage. And the same thing for like if they're wearing armor, like chest plate armor, then stabbing them won't do much damage and you have to slash them. There's also decapitations and dismemberment, which I like, especially with the bosses in this game. But something that's really cool is it's so detailed, because it's not just down to the armored system with enemies, but also actually the durability of your weapons that you created yourself. And it's not just like your whole weapon, it's literally as detailed as, like the handle of your weapon down to the tip of your spear or the blade of your sword. Each attack will, basically react with your weapon and basically break the durability over time and impact its usefulness depending on what swing you take. So it's actually very tactical. You can't just swing blindly. You have to think about your weapon stats right now and the enemy's armored stats. So it's a very, kind of chess type of combat. It's very slow paced, which I like because I'm a huge fan of that slower paced combat in Dark Souls. It's no surprise I like 1 much more than Elden Ring or 3, because I much prefer that slower nature combat approach, and even Dark Souls 2. So I really do like that kind of attentive, kind of back and forth with the enemy, and that's what makes this game truly unique. It's quite funny because I absolutely love Dark Souls. I'm a huge fan. It's one of my all-time favorite games, but it's just so weird, like everything has to be compared to it now, and it is a shame that it does, borrow some elements from it, like resetting the enemies at the forge when you rest, and I do like the idea of not losing something when you die, but actually dropping your weapons when you die. It's kind of that mechanic that we've seen other games play around with, like with Outward, where you drop your backpack. It's kind of the same thing. You lose your weapon, but you can go back and retrieve it, and it adds that element of, not being... It adds that risk reward / element, but some people might find it annoying, especially when weapons are easy to break. Some people don't like that durability type of management, and there is a lot of that in this game. That is basically its core feature. So if you don't like that in games, you really need to understand that this is the main mechanic. And if you don't like repairing your weapons on the fly, kind of like Liza P did, and really watching your durability as you play, as you actually engage with the enemy as well, because it all depends on where you attack, then this might not be for you. It's not one of those games where you can just go in swinging and hope for the best. Another positive that I want to give this game is just the ambience and vibe of this world. Like I said, it's quite detailed and unique. I love the music so far, and I love the art style of it. Like I said, bulky characters that you would get in the 360 early Xbox days, but makes it more high definition, lots of foliage, but it still does have that kind of B quality to it, that AA or kind of indie feel, which is a little bit weird when this is coming from a known developer, and you can tell that they did certainly have a budget in some aspects compared to some parts of the game where the core focus was its combat experience. Now onto the next negative / positive. I'm not giving it a full negative or a full positive because I think this really depends on the type of player you are, but it certainly isn't executed well enough for it to be a positive. So this isn't an open world game, and that's fine. Not every game needs to be an open world, and it's quite refreshing that it's not actually, and it's respecting your time. But basically how this game works is it's built on a kind of linear progression system. Sadly, the shortcuts and the kind of world level design isn't that interesting to me. It doesn't have much verticality, there isn't much secrets to explore. There are treasure chests to be found, and that is quite good, but the exploration isn't its key point here, and I think the level design in general is just a little bit lacking. And onto the big final positive of this game, and that is kind of the mini game within this game, and that is the forging of your weapons. Okay, so basically the whole point of this game is you are this kind of powerful demigod blacksmith, and forging weapons is a big process in this game. It goes down to like the quality of your wood, to how many enemies you've defeated, so you can actually craft using some of the kind of enemies' resources and essence to create that weapon, and then it has a whole mini game where you can literally handcraft from the tip of the spear down to, you know, the handle, the same thing with the sword down to its pommel, and it basically starts out as a block of this, you know, heated metal, and you actually have to, you know, fine tune it to be this perfect sword or weapon, and you get graded based on, you know, like the quality of your weapon. And this matters because basically in the later game when you're fighting harder enemies, it's going to matter the quality of your weapon. So the mini game itself is quite satisfying. It's not just, you know, tap button, you know, quick time events. It's more about, you know, like precision with, you know, your kind of shaping of the blade, obviously with your controller or with your, you know, controls on PC, but still it feels much more involved, and I really do like that. Some other little tweaks that I don't really like, you know, the kind of HUD elements in this game that I'm not a big fan of, and how enemies are highlighted, but the color-coded enemies is actually all about, you know, their kind of armor type. And of course there's the usual consumables that you would get in a Souls-like game. So it's doing many things that are unique, but then many aspects of it are quite underdeveloped or feel very, very indie to the point where it feels like a mixed bag. And it just doesn't feel fully fleshed out, and then quite novice in some areas like the level design. So overall I would say that this is a mixed game. It's one of those games that if you love this type of management and you like the type of physics based you know, like directional attack type games, and I love them, you know, like Blade and Sorcery, for example, like Mount & Blade, I absolutely love that. For example, it's a lot more involved than something like For Honor, and if you like games like Chivalry and stuff like that, I think you'll find this fun, but just don't go in expecting it to be a full complete package. It's very much an homage to that older style of game, and I think it does it pretty good for the most part, but it was quite budget, but you can tell that it was quite... But you can tell that it is just underdeveloped in some areas and feels like almost a B movie you're watching at times, which does have its charm to it at times, but again, it might not be for everyone. So I would say that maybe check this out on Deep Sale, and also the biggest negative of all, it's on Epic Game Store. So that's already given it a huge amount of damage as it's not releasing on Steam. So, is Blades of Fire worth it? I would say it really depends, like I said, on those positives and negatives and where it's kind of stacking up for you. If you're not a fan of that type of gameplay, of course it's not worth it for you. And if you want a more polished experience, then this again is not worth it for you. But if you're just looking for a fun combat game that tries something unique and new and it's tactical and you actually have to think about it, this might be worth it. But I would say it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's still playing with creative ideas, and that's what I want to commend, because that's what we need more of in this, you know, media, gaming, anything in life. We need to push and innovate to try and be better, to try and think outside the box, and that's why I am recommending this, but with a big, you know, kind of warning, because of all the elements that I've already talked about. So I do hope you enjoyed this Blades of Fire review. Like I said, I just wanted to talk about this one because I feel like it's not going to get much love. And yeah, let me know what you think down below in the comments, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a great day. Peace out.